From each happily ever after, every wish upon a star. Let's break down the movies that shaped who we are. From memory lane to now and everything in between. The most famous of films to the ones we've never seen. Decade by decade, all the times we laughed and cried. And with a little pixie dust, they will all take flight. Reliving the feelings, and we're trying our very best. And if they mean the same to you, please be our guest. So hop aboard, we would love to have you as we hang with a certain mouth, the whole gang too. If you love nostalgia stuff, we hope this does the trick. Thanks for joining us as we deep dive the magic.
Hi, and welcome back to the Deep Diving the Magic podcast. I'm KJ.
And I'm Jeffrey. And on today's episode, we will be diving into a little bit different of a movie than what we've been watching. Well, kind of the same in some ways, but we will be diving into a film, the 21st feature full-length Disney film from July 23rd, 1953. It is called The Sword and the Rose.
Yes.
The Sword and the Rose is a live-action retelling of some royal families, I would say. But go ahead and tell us the synopsis and see what it actually is about.
During the reign of Henry VIII, Mary Tudor seeks to flee a forced marriage with the French king by escaping to America with her true love. But her plans are not so easily executed.
Well, that's the entirety of the movie, so we'll see you next week. No, I'm just,
We will spare you what we went through.
Opening thoughts before we dive into much?
The main character, Charles Brandon, is the same guy that played Robin from Robin Hood
a few
movies back. And I kept thinking he looks familiar, and then when I was doing my research, I was like, that's why. But he kind of looks different. I feel like he had a different hair color in this one.
So they've replaced us always seeing Bobby Driscoll now with seeing a couple movies with all the same people, because not only is he
Bobby Driscoll actually will not be in another Disney movie. He was let go after Peter Pan. I'm sorry I didn't mention that, but in case you're a fan of his, sorry.
You know what, he had quite a run.
He did.
So not only is this
it's this guy.
Not only is it the same actor as Robin Hood, like you said, the Princess Mary. She's 100% played the same way that plays Mrs. Banks from Mary Poppins. You can just tell by her voice. Like, obviously she's older because Mary Poppins comes out in a handful of years, but actually I did some research on her, and she just passed away this year at the age of 100.
Amazing.
The Duke of Buckingham was the guy who played Alfred from the 80s and 90s Batman movies.
Okay.
And the guy who played King Henry is in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which is another movie I loved growing up that I doubt you've ever seen.
I've never seen that. I don't think
so. It's not on our watch list because it's not this company, but it's awesome.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever watched it.
Anything that you would like to talk or give us a little bit of a background or anything?
Well, I mean, I've always loved history, and
you also always loved the royals.
Yeah, I guess. Henry VIII was never one of my favorites. I think he was very overrated, and I guess seeing some of the dumb things that he did, it kind of makes you think, like, why do we allow the monarchy to be a thing?
Could you do a top 10 list upon a star of royals?
No, because I don't really care about them that much.
All right, so are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, so it kind of opens up, and I thought it was interesting because it opened up with English wrestlers and French wrestlers in Henry's court.
Yeah, so it starts off, the first thing it says is, like, there's like a writing on the screen that says Windsor Castle early in the reign of Henry VIII.
Yeah.
And something I wrote because, so there's no confusion, most times in movies about royals you see that, like, it's like the king and the queen, and then like their child is the princess, but in this film it's the sister.
Yes, it is his sister.
Mary Tudor is Henry's younger sister.
Because as the king, it's your right to marry off all of your relatives however you see
Mhm.
fit, especially women, because we were just property back then.
Well, she's anything but
Thank
property in
God
this
it's not
film.
that day now.
She is anything but property in this film.
Yeah.
So Mary is Henry's younger sister,
And she's known for being stubborn.
which we'll get to.
Thank God.
She made a whole career out of being stubborn,
Yeah.
but we'll get there. So like you said, there is the two men fighting
Mm-hmm.
for entertainment. Henry is upset because his men can't outfight the Frenchmen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they lose, but then Charles
Well,
Brandon. Go ahead.
yes. So Charles Brandon steps in and says he'll wrestle, but then Mary offers up the Duke of Buckingham
Buckingham.
to wrestle, which seems to be one of her close confidants. Like,
Yeah, it's kind of like her suitor, I guess.
um, I don't think he really was her suitor, but I think like
He wants to
obviously
be.
later in the movie he
He
tries to be,
he
but
definitely wants to be.
I don't think she actually viewed him that way.
The Duke does win that fight.
Yes, he
Um,
does.
but then they decide that they're gonna have this Charles Brandon guy, who
Mhm.
I refer to a lot as Brandon because in the film they refer to him by his last name a bunch. But
Yep.
Charles Brandon versus the Duke because it pleases your grace, they said.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that means. Charles Brandon wins in a very WWE way.
Yeah.
He slams him.
Thought it was funny when he
Yeah.
ripped his shirt off and then had him in a chokehold. I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we are going
Yeah.
WWE on this one."
Yep. But since he wins, Charles Brandon becomes the new
Cruiserweights. They were definitely cruiserweights.
Yeah, that's true. He becomes the new captain of the guard.
Yep.
But actually, literally from here, I wrote that the Duke of Buckingham is trying to woo Mary. So I literally added this early in the film.
Yeah. I think he always kind of is, but I think she just kind of doesn't
Yeah.
really see him that way, so he's kind of invisible to her.
So she does invite Charles Brandon to her ball, but she bets another royal man 10 crowns if Brandon knows how to dance.
Mm-hmm.
10 crowns is 1,600 pounds or $2,100 in today's money, US dollars. I'm gonna bet you $2,100 that I can't dance. But then she ends up not liking how he can dance.
Yeah.
But she doesn't like how he dances because boldness has no bounds. You have anything to say
Yeah,
on
but that wasn't at the dance. I think that was like at
like a
a thing behind scenes, and
Yeah.
and then she asked if she was a prude because of not liking the way he danced.
He very much like Dirty Dancing danced on it though.
Yeah, but I mean
At the times.
yeah, for the times, but if you put yourself through it and watch this movie, you'll kind of probably get a chuckle out of that because it definitely wasn't like what she was making it out to be. Although later on when they do dance at the ball and she dances with him that way,
But we'll get there on that.
the queen was outraged.
Yeah. So then we get to the ball, and the Duke of Buckingham sees Charles Brandon, but he doesn't like that Master Brandon is there, and he draws his sword on him, but he finds out that he was invited by the princess.
Mm-hmm.
And then Princess Mary does choose Charles Brandon for the honor of the opening dance, like we said.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see that the king is dozing off during the dances.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who has sisters who had dance rehearsals growing up, I can relate to him dozing off.
Your sister said you didn't even watch their dances.
Well, they lied. So they do the dance, like we mentioned, the dirty dancing, we'll call it. And the queen is very upset, and she storms off.
Well, she basically says that it needs to stop, and
The king
then
allows it, right?
and then Mary's like, "Well, it's my ball, so we can't dance the way that I want to dance at my ball." And then that's when the king steps in because obviously, I mean, I guess it was pretty promiscuous at the time for this dance to be going on.
But he allows it.
But he was just like, "Yeah, sure," because I mean, he was falling asleep, so maybe that held his attention.
That's right. So that everybody's trying to learn how to do the dance, but they all look goofy and fall over.
Mm.
But then the film transitions from the ball to archery practice with the king and his men.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Brandon shoots down a bird, but then Mary, very suspiciously, will say, forces her horse to take off running into the woods because she knows that Charles Brandon will follow her to protect her.
Hmm.
Anything on that before we keep going?
And I felt like she went way out of her way to show her interest in this person,
It's true. Um,
considering she was a princess and she should have known that she wasn't going to get to choose who she wanted to be with.
hey, she's a fighter. So in the woods, she does royally command and sovereignly decrees him to read her a sonnet, which he
Hmm.
does not ready for, but he does pull something off.
Hmm.
But then we find out, like we mentioned earlier, that she doesn't get to make a lot of decisions like that, and um, King Henry wants the Princess Mary to marry King Louis,
From France.
kind of like a treaty between lands, right? For money
Yeah.
or something.
But, well, basically. I mean, he was going to get money for her. And then at that point, I mean, if you have your sister being the queen of a foreign country that's not technically like an ally to you, that makes them an ally to you and gives you somewhat of power and safety. Ridiculous.
So, um, she kind of takes off from this,
Hmm.
um, even though like she refuses to go see the king, so he demands to
Hmm.
enter her room, and she has her and her friend, I don't or whatever her lady friend, um,
Her lady in waiting.
lady in waiting. That's the word I couldn't think of. See, you love the royals. So
I love history.
um, the king demands into her room, but they like make like a plan that she's going to be indecently in her bed, and everybody are shocked.
Yeah.
So like I wrote, this lady was very much women's rights before she was very much women's rights in Mary Poppins too,
Positive feminist.
for sure. Um, well, we'll get there about Mary Poppins because Mary Poppins will do something that this movie is not, and that's make the list. She she
Spoiler alert, but
she escapes the king and she runs to go meet Charles Brandon,
yeah.
but is unfortunately informed that he did resign from his post today and is traveling to the New World. Anything
Yeah.
to add on that?
Um, yeah, I mean, she finds that out. She's upset about it.
Clearly, he has feelings for her, so he's just trying to like he
Yeah.
knows his place, so he's
And
traveling.
he was already warned in the beginning not to fall in love with her, and he's basically said he wasn't going to, but
He does leave a letter.
love will get you when you least expect it.
Welcome to Disney. He leaves her a letter,
Yeah.
kind of explaining everything. So then we see that Mary dresses in disguise as one of the men, to find Brandon and join him on his ship to the New World.
Yeah.
She does get there, and
She was going to be his page.
I don't know what that means, but okay. I must have missed this. What does that mean?
It's basically like his assistant.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be his page.
Well, then he kisses his assistant because in this next scene
Page boy.
is the first time that they kiss.
Hmm.
He teaches her how to act and walk like one of his people, but then as the ship is about to take off, one of the higher up men is forcing everybody to throw their hats overboard for good luck.
Well, they all had to take a drink for good luck, and he tells her to stay in the cabin, that I'll just drink for both of us. I'll say that you're seasick. So then he goes out and they're like, no, 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 he has to come out. So they made her come out. And after they take drinks, because I thought it was funny, she was taking her drink, but she's like pouring it out too. Did you notice that?
I mean,
So she was
I would
pouring
do
it
the
out.
same
She
thing.
wasn't really drinking it. And I'm like, is nobody gonna notice the wet spot that you're just leaving in front of you
I
on
mean,
the ground? But
they are on
whatever.
a ship.
Well,
They think the ship is a hole in it, and then they do that.
of whatever they're drinking. Yeah. And then like you said, they're told they all have to toss their hats off for good
For good
luck,
luck.
and she's kind of trying to back away into the room again,
But
but
they make her.
they make her, and her hair falls down, and
She's caught as a woman.
Pantene commercial.
Um,
You're welcome.
Around the same time, the king's men do arrest Charles Branson and lock him in the Tower of London and write up papers.
Well, hang on. So they threw them off the boat.
Yeah.
And then like perfectly at the time where they just got thrown off the boat, the King's Guard shows
Yeah.
up. Perfect timing.
So they arrest Charles Branson
Brandon.
for treason.
Mhm.
and they lock him in the Tower of London and write up papers for his execution. But Mary does kiss him one last time before he's taken away. She tries to change her brother's mind, who's the king, by the way. And he decides to spare Brandon's life as long as she agrees to marry King Louis, which is what he wanted her to do in the first place.
Yeah.
To which she does finally agree to that as long as she is allowed to choose anyone she wants to marry after King Louis dies.
Yeah, because I think Henry did mention to her that he was
Not in the best health. He's
he's
not
old
yeah, he's
and
a little bit
he's
older.
not doing that well. But at the same time, you have to give it to Mary because she does stand up for herself and for her rights, and she kind of outwits her brother a little bit.
Sure.
But at the same time, I thought, man, I mean, he is known for beheading people, and you're just over here like, mm-mm.
Well,
And
it's
at that
this is
time, I
fair.
don't. I guess maybe he hasn't really beheaded people
Yeah.
yet. He's not going on his heads will roll phase. So
Well, stop painting the roses red. So Mary and Louis get married. She becomes the Queen of France.
hmm
And in the end, they all live happily ever after. Just kidding. Mary does convince her new husband to drink in excess.
yeah.
And she does it by kissing the chalices of wine, convincing him to drink.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
She's
Like,
like seductively kissing these chalices of
I
wine
was
to get
like,
him to drink.
was this like a famous thing known
I don't
back in
know.
the day? Like here you go. You have to drink this now. I was like, what is she doing?
Yeah.
Like, I was confused by how that was her encouraging him to drink, but like he did keep drinking until he basically just fell out at his
Yep.
own party.
I
I just
wrote
think
that.
it was their wedding, and she was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
our wedding night."
That's it. Yep.
It's okay, I understand.
So King Louis falls out of his chair ill, which I wrote was a very bummer way to spend a wedding. Um,
Yeah.
but meanwhile, the Duke from before pretends to help Charles Brandon escape the tower.
Yeah.
But as he's escaping by rope from the tower, the Duke's men attack him in his getaway boat and stab
hmm
Brandon literally in the back and throw him in the moat.
Oh, I thought it was more the shoulder, but okay.
The end, and they don't live happily ever after. Just kidding. But unknown to the Duke, Brandon did survive the stabbing and floats to the shore.
Yep.
And then King Louis passes away, and the
Yeah,
you
but
know,
there's something else happened.
what do we got
So she was riding horses again with him, and
with the king?
yeah, so she was riding horses with the king after his whole drunken episode, and I guess horseback riding must have been a strenuous activity
I
for
mean,
an old man.
I'm in pretty good shape, and I bet you it would be a strenuous activity for me.
Yeah, so she kind of like makes him think that she's like super impressed by his like horse riding skill, so he like shows off a little bit for her, and then he basically ends up passing out on his horse, and she's like, "Oh no, I never saw that happening." But I don't know if you mentioned it. I guess the Dauphin, which is the I guess I do enjoy the royals sometimes. The Dauphin, which is technically the Prince of France, he sees what she's doing, but he's basically saying, well, when he dies, I'm
Yeah,
gonna take you as my bride.
I'm gonna marry her.
Yeah. And he's fine with it because he doesn't seem to have any attachment to his father whatsoever. Um, but I guess the horse thing actually ended up really taking a toll on him because at that point she realizes when she goes back that he's probably not going to make it because she like checked in on his status. So then she tells her lady in waiting, "I'm you must go back and let them know she's planning to go back and
Mm.
marry Brandon."
But unfortunately, when that after that happens, after the king passes away, the Duke does inform everybody that Brandon is dead from trying to escape.
Mm-hmm.
To
She's very upset.
to which the Duke then tries to force Mary to marry him in a very aggressive way
Mm-hmm.
because everybody wants to marry Mary.
He shows his true villainous colors.
It's true. But then in perfect timing, Charles Brandon does show up.
Mm-hmm.
They duel in the water. It looks like the Duke gets stabbed in the armpit. I don't know if you noticed that. It totally looks like he's like when you're kids and you're like playing like swords
Oh,
and you
yeah.
stab someone in the armpit. That's what it does. That's what it looked like. Um, but either way, Brandon does stab the Duke, and then Brandon and Mary go back to see the King Henry, while he's counting his money. So no wonder they could afford to make a bet on who could dance because he was counting so much money. Mary does convince Henry to let her marry Brandon because he did say that she could choose her next husband after Lewis's death. But then since Mary, she should marry somebody with royal something, so they make him Charles Brandon, the Duke of Suffolk. Is that correct?
Yes. But supposedly there was a blooper that he actually called him the wrong thing in the movie. But
I guess he couldn't pronounce Suffolk or something.
I listened to it and it did not sound wrong.
So Mary keeps asking the king for other things, and the king says something along the lines of, "If she remains at court, she will regal my ears from me." I don't know what that means, but
but Brandon also, I guess, because the French government, I guess, was sending over money, but then they were going to take it back because obviously the marriage didn't work out, and she wasn't going to marry the Dauphin that became king. So, but Brandon steps in. He's like, "Oh, I thought this was a gift from France." And then Henry like winks at him like, "Yes, yes, it is." So I think he realized that he did good by making him, I guess, like a higher member of society because
the Duke of Suffolk.
He benefited from that because he got to keep the money from France.
It's true. So then they kiss, and the last shot is of a stained glass window with a sword and the rose in it. And the end, they all live happily ever after. I'm not kidding this time. That's the end of
Just
the movie.
kidding.
Nope. I mean, not kidding. That's how the movie ends.
So, I did think it was funny because the money that we were talking about that France was wanting back was in 3 different containers, and then Henry, because she's still making all these demands, she basically says, "Well, one of these is ours," and he was like, "Okay, so yeah, take this and get her out of my castle."
So,
like he doesn't already have enough of everything.
So we made it to the end of this.
Yeah.
Film.
What's
your rating? What's your thoughts?
I mean, it's not something I would ever watch again. Knowing history, it was interesting to see some of the characters and like the names of actual people being in it. And then like if you ever watched like The Tudors or anything on TV, Charles Brandon is played by Henry Cavill. He looks a lot better than this guy, but this guy was definitely a better looker than the King of France that died. The Dauphin of France didn't look too bad. So, I mean, if she would have had to marry him, I guess it wouldn't be terrible compared to his dad. It definitely wasn't one of my favorites.
What did you rate it?
I rated it a 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. What did IMDb rate it?
It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great.
What did IMDb rate it?
6.3 out of 10.
IMDb rated this only 1 point lower than they rated Peter Pan. Ridiculous. So does this make your list upon a star? And can you read us your list upon a star?
Unfortunately, it's not going to make my list upon a star. I did not like it that much.
Well, what's your current top 10, my friend?
My current top 10 is Dumbo, The Three Caballeros, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Fantasia, Saludos Amigos, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Bambi, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and Cinderella.
And my list upon a star top 10 is also staying the same, with Peter Pan at number 1, Alice in Wonderland following behind that, and Pinocchio, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, The Three Caballeros, Cinderella, Dumbo, Bambi, and Fun and Fancy Free at number 10. Well, my friends, I have to talk to you about what's next. There's been a few times where I said, the next film is something different. Well, the next film is something very different than anything that we've done so far. We have entered the first of a few of this is the first full-length true adventure film. And if you don't know what that is, we are going to watch some creepy animals attacking other creepy animals. It is a
Spoiler alert.
it is
Way to
a
go, Jeff. I don't even know what we're going to talk about next time.
so we are watching The Living Desert, which is one of Walt's live action animal documentaries. So we'll see you then, but thank you for watching. Don't forget to rate, review, comment, subscribe. Thanks for spreading the word and coming along with us on this journey, but would you like to take us out?
Yeah. Thanks for deep diving the magic.
Bye.
Bye.